Morning, everyone. I'm gonna do a little Snapchat because I'm starting my live stream. Just figure, who knows? Love, light, Ananda. Good morning and welcome. So, y'all, I did not get a video up. I have stories to tell you. I'm gonna dish all the dirt today about my project that finished yesterday. Gonna talk about that. Gonna talk about some. I am really um, I'm really deep into this project that I'm working on right now, the Black Conference, and getting that going. I'm really thrilled. It was nice because I have so much stuff going on over here during the shows, during the program that that we just presented. I was able to share a little bit about. I don't know if you could see, but we have kind of the first, the very first marketing is starting to go out around the show. So I'm super excited about that and to talk to you all a little bit about that. And I'm going to go catch a little bit of theater today. A friend of mine who's an amazing actor. He actually won the Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Play in 2009. His name is Roger Robinson, and he's going to be doing a reading of A Christmas Carol at the Billie Holiday Theater. So as soon as this is done, I'm going to get myself together and head over to the Billie Holiday Theater. And I haven't seen Roger in a little bit, so it's going to be exciting. I hope I get to spend some time with him. Maybe, we'll try to entice him to go to dinner with me or something like that. So that is what's on the agenda for today after the live stream. But as my title says, today we're going to be looking a little bit at the tradition of Black conservatism, and in part like the tradition of Black Republicans, but particularly Black conservatism. And when I talk about Black conservatism, that is on a trajectory between Black people who feel as though there should be are interested in seeing a slow progression towards civil rights, slow progression towards a healing place between white America and Black America, or Blacks in America who are the descendants of slaves, and African Americans, Black people who want change and want to see some drastic changes made through policy, through law, right? So that's the difference between people who want slow, simple, gradual change, mostly based on Black people just behaving themselves and being good citizens and convincing everyone that they deserve to be treated fairly and like human beings, even though they may not be treated like human beings, and those who just I don't care what you think of me, I want my rights, and all of those things, right? So those are the two, let's say that those are the two ends of the spectrum. And one of the reasons that I'm super interested in this is obviously because I'm working on the Black Conference, and in the Black Conference we're going to be introducing a lot of people from the history of the Civil Rights Movement, and some of those people were very conservative, one of them being George Schuyler, and I'm going to talk a little bit about George Schuyler. And I just dove into the autobiography of George Schuyler, Black and Conservative. So there's the proof. It's in a book, and if it's in a book, so I've also been, there's also like the history of people who like W.E.B. Du Bois. I just finished his autobiography, Dusk of Dawn, And that, unfortunately, I've been reading that on my, I got that as a PDF, so I've been reading that on my phone, so I can't show you a cover from that. Maybe I have a little, maybe there's a little thumbnail that I could share with all of you. So, yes, so reading W.E.B. Du Bois, and I'm also reading right now, um, this is Melinda Chateauvert, I believe that's the name, and the book is Marching Together. It's the women of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and I'm not sure if people know at all anything about the history of the labor movement in the United States, but A. Philip Randolph was a huge part of that, and A. Philip Randolph was one of the prominent leaders in the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and was a key force in the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters winning the first union contract with the Pullman Company. And the Pullman Company, they made sleeping cars. They basically they were like a cartel as far as the United States railway system was concerned. And so A. Philip Randolph, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, it was originally called the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and Maids. And the words "and maids" were removed from the title of the organization right around the time that they won this groundbreaking victory against the Pullman Company, really the first union contract successfully negotiated with the Pullman Company. And they went on to be the first black union that was part of the American, I believe it's the American Federation of Labor, the AFL, which is now merged with the CIO to become AFL-CIO. So big deal. Anyway, there was a whole kind of women's half of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and they went under the Ladies Auxiliary to the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. And so the maids were, yes. Well, that's a great question. That's one of the questions that will be addressed in this play, The Black Conference. So I don't want to go into too much detail. Actually, I do. I want to go into a lot of detail. I want to go into a lot of detail. So to answer your question, yes, the word maids were removed. There was always a tension between women who were part of the union, and this was in 1939. So let's place ourselves historically. So in 1939, there was a lot of energy, and a lot of it coming from conservatives who wanted to focus on having African Americans be assimilated and adhere to the cultural values that existed in the United States. And the cultural values that existed in the United States said that women were supposed to be at home in the kitchen, taking care of their kids, or just dressed pretty and standing next to their husband smiling and looking like, dress-up dolls. So to have women as part of this, as at the front of labor, just didn't look good. Why are they working anyway? Does that mean that the men can't take care of them? And those were considerations then. If your wife worked, it was a poor reflection on your family. It meant that the husband couldn't provide. Sucks, stupid, horrible, horrible. And we've clearly made some progress. Yeah, the men weren't taking care of them, right? And this is all part of when we talk about patriarchy, this is what we're talking about. Okay, so I did find, this is the Dusk of Dawn that I just finished up before I picked up Marching Together, and then I took a break from Marching Together to get into the George Schuyler because I'm just so fascinated with George Schuyler. And so this brings us back to this is bringing me back to this whole question of the tradition of, again, Black conservatism. And it's so interesting to me because what Black conservatism has become is simply a denial that, anything's wrong. A denial that anything is wrong in the United States, that there's nothing that we need to be, there's no difference between being a white person in America and a black person in America. And what's interesting is that in the history, even recent history, so George Schuyler's, hello, whoever's joining us, welcome. So George Schuyler is writing this autobiography in 1966 was the publishing date. So in some years leading up to that. And so 1966, which to some of us is not that long ago, it's 50 plus years ago. I know it well because I was born around then, right? So anyway, I love this. George Schuyler, in the very opening in the book, says, "A black person learns very early that his color is a disadvantage in the world of white folks. This being an unalterable circumstance, one also learns very early to make the best of it. So the lifetime endeavor of the intelligent Negro is how to be reasonably happy, though colored. Certainly this requires considerable doing, and like all other people, the colored are not equally endowed with alertness, resourcefulness, ingenuity, and adaptability. Some have been unable to triumph over the vicissitudes of varying environments, while others have. On the whole, it is remarkable that the race has survived and prospered beyond the wildest imaginations of their forebears who stumbled ashore, tethered by the founding fathers." Okay, so that is, my library doesn't have any books by W.E.B. Du Bois. Yes, get some. Love Light Ananda, get some. But that quote was from George Schuyler. So just to give you a sense that you could be conservative in 1960. Matt Blender, welcome. You just missed me reading a little quote from George Schuyler, his autobiography, Black and Conservative, George Schuyler. Hey, Chickpea Sarni, welcome. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, so I'm talking about the idea of Black conservatism. So in the past, Black conservatives have been fully aware of the imbalances that have existed in American society between people of color and other African Americans specifically, and other people of other ethnic or cultural groupings, right? Because all of this stuff is just how people are labeled, right? Ultimately we're all the same. We're all the same. And by all the same, we all, potentially every individual can, has the potential to excel in all of the ways that they might possibly excel. And they have the potential to fail in all the ways that, that people might fail. Right? So that stuff should not be broken down based on race. But we live in a society that culturally seems to put people in these categories. And so dealing with the reality of the categories that exist, Republicans, conservatives in general, back in the day understood that those things were true. And somehow the rhetoric has shifted amongst Black conservatives to a place where they feel that there can be no conversation about the social distresses, right? I want to say social distresses, right? So there are things that socially are distressful to certain individuals based on who they are, right? And it doesn't just affect people who happen to identify as African American or who happen to be identified as African Americans, right? But there certainly is, a set of what should I say? A way of thinking around what it means to be Black that seems to be generalized in American society, that leads to thinking about people who happen to be identified as African American in certain ways. And if you want the evidence, just go to my YouTube channel and read the comments. Just go to my YouTube channel, read down the comments, right? I don't have to tell you what people are thinking. It's there, right? And there are, thousands of comments from various people to show that there are, there are definitely modes of thinking about people based on race. So That said, how did we get to this place in 2017, almost 2018, where there are African Americans who are in complete denial that when they move through the world, they are moving through the world with the baggage of history. You carry the baggage of history, right? So let's look at it this way. If we think about Germany, is it possible to think about Germany without thinking about the history of fascism in Germany? Not that we would ever, I don't know how you, I don't know what y'all would do, but I would never just assume that somebody who was German was, a certain way or felt a certain way about anyone based on their culture. But there's certainly a history that you drag along with you. You kind of drag along with you. And when certain topics come up, if you happen to be the German in the room, people might look at you first. Like if the topic of Adolf Hitler comes up, people might want to know what you think about all of that, right? So these are histories that we carry with us, and they just happen to be what we carry with us. And uh, what tends to happen is that people generalize and lump people into categories around what has happened historically. We can also look at what's happening today in terms of people who are Muslim or people who are connected to Islam, right? Everyone gets, thrown into the same category, right? Oh, Islam. Oh, it's dangerous, right? Oh, Antifa. Oh, they're dangerous, right? So even though there may be just like a few people in that group that behave a certain way, we are very good, and maybe as human beings in general, at throwing everybody into the same category. So how is it possible that folks like Red Pill Black can uh, think of themselves as somehow marginalized because they happen to come from a position of conservatism, or they happen to be Republican, right? As if all Republicans are the same, right? Or as if all Democrats all are the same. I know people who have, you know what, I'm going to tell you guys, there was a time when I was actually registered as a Republican, and I kind of did it as a goof, but it doesn't matter. Like it didn't make any difference what label I took on, right? It didn't change the way that I voted. It didn't change the things that were important to me, and we've had talks about this before. So Chickpea Sarni says, hello, there is a 24-hour vegan charity stream to raise money for Sale Ranch Animal Sanctuary currently on YouTube, the channel Chris Hines. Okay, thank you for making that announcement. So if you are watching this and it happens to be within the 24-hour period, it's 11:20 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it is December 17th, 2017. So if you're hearing this in time to go over and check out Chris Hines's 24-hour charity stream to raise money for the Sale Ranch Animal Sanctuary, currently on the YouTube channel Chris Hines. Yeah, check it out. Thank you, Chickpea Sarni, for that. And thank you so much as well for the likes. So yeah, how do we get there? How do we get to this place where, people who are conservatives kind of see themselves as marginalized when there's such a long history of conservatism that doesn't have to do with, so being black and being conservative is not a sellout, right? It's not a sellout. You are part of a tradition. And when we go back historically, we can go back to say like the 50s, the 40s, the 50s, and see that there were, it was 50-50. If you were black, there was 50-50 that you were going to be registered as a Republican or a Democrat. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that, people kind of went with, like this is what people were doing in your community. And so like if everybody in your community was a Democrat and like, a lot of black people were, they were down in the South, and that's what people voted, Democrat, right? I don't know. I don't know what that's about. I don't know why it was 50-50, but it was 50-50. It just happened to be 50-50. And we have some, famous people who were part of the civil rights movement. Ida B. Wells, who was one of the founders of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, conservative, Republican, right? Meaningless. And so that now we feel like being a Republican or being conservative automatically means that someone is a, a race traitor or something like that. It doesn't make any sense at all. A lot of religious black folk are Republican. Yeah, I can imagine that, and it really depends on the issue that's the most important to you. And conservatives tend to lean religious. Conservatives tend to, Christian values are, tied into the identity of being a conservative, right? Oh, just so you know, we just got an update from Chick Pisarni. That 24-hour charity stream is only happening for another hour and 40 minutes. So if it is after, I'm going to say if it's after 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, where you are uh, on December 17th, it is likely over. But who knows? I'm sure there is a way for people who want to still give to give. I have never had trouble donating money, even if I miss the deadline for giving. So do check it out anyway, even if it's not the right time. Do check out Chris Hines' channel. That's Chris, and the last name is spelled Hin as in Nancy, Es as in Sam. Right, Chris Hines. Check out the YouTube channel, and I'm sure there's going to be, the video will probably be archived, and you'll be able to check it out and find out how, if you want to support that cause, you can support that cause. And so, yeah, history of black conservatism, right? And so this goes back, I think, probably the most famous black conservative, as in, chill out, black folks, things will get better on their own, would have been Booker T. Washington, right? And so as I'm reading, particularly Dusk of Dawn, the W.E.B. Du Bois autobiography, there's a lot about Booker T. Washington, and the sense that people felt with Booker T. Washington, it wasn't so much that he was conservative, it was that he was telling black people that they should not push for equal rights, that they should let things happen, they should go on, they should live their lives and let things happen gradually. And who's to say, because, we've seen shifts, but these shifts have occurred in tandem with a lot of work, right? A lot of movement, a lot of building a huge grassroots movement, right? And we can think about the folks who've been involved in that movement, including A. Philip Randolph, who fought for equal rights for black workers, and in fact had planned to stage a march on Washington in the early 40s. And the only reason that march didn't happen was because there was a concession, and blacks were given better footing in the labor movement as far as military contracts. Now, of course, I hear that and I'm like, ugh, right? What are there not? Yes, a lot of work, a lot of work. Yes, Love Light Ananda, a lot of work. Of course, and then we can add into that. We can add the work of folks like Martin Luther King. We can add the work of someone like Malcolm X, right? So there's been a lot of organizing and effort that has gone into making drastic changes. The NAACP fighting nonstop to win the court case, the Brown versus Board of Education court case that Thurgood Marshall was the lawyer, the lead counsel on, right? The lead attorney, right? So these are things that, if they hadn't happened, would eventually people have just said, oh, I guess it's okay for black people to go. Does power ever concede anything without some kind of struggle, right? And so George Schuyler was more from the school of thought that black people should just deal with the fact that we live in a world that's messed up. We live in a world that's messed up. White people have messed up attitudes, and so we just have to press on. To the point where George Schuyler wanted to see an economy built around Black solidarity. So this is a conservative Black person saying that Black people should go and build their own things, build their own communities, build their own economies that were insulated from whites. And then with those institutions built, they might be able to negotiate and then collaborate more with white people, but only after there had been this strong these self-sufficient Black economies that were existing within America. So I'm just saying, this is like, this is a conservative that's saying, hey, Black people, we should just like let white people do their own thing and do our own thing. And this is the same thing, however, that radical thinkers like Marcus Garvey, who was part of the Back to Africa movement and who preached Pan-Africanism and built the largest Black organization of the century, probably of the century, right? The Universal Negro Improvement Association, I believe, UNIA, which was Marcus Garvey's organization, which had millions of members around the world, and it was a global organization. And that likely was not that comfortable for some people that to see a movement of Africans to that extent, right? So, Claudio D, welcome to the broadcast. I hope everyone's well today. How is everyone? And thank you for becoming a fan, Claudio D. So yeah, so I hope everyone is well. So then as we continue to look at like the folks who have been conservative, more conservative, folks who have been less conservative, you have someone like Zora Neale Hurston who wrote, beautiful stories about, Black liberation. And from a feminist perspective as well, who was a conservative. And I think the biggest difference was that conservatives acknowledged the issues that Black people faced, but felt that they were only going to be resolved through the efforts of Black people and working in solidarity in some cases, and sometimes being very individualistic, like Zora Neale Hurston was fairly individualistic in her writings and her thinkings. However, Zora Neale Hurston wrote an appeal to W.E.B. Du Bois later in life. I believe it was in the mid-40s, and I actually have a copy of the letter that, not a copy of the letter, but I have an image, a JPEG of the letter that Zora Neale Hurston wrote to W.E.B. Du Bois, because Zora Neale Hurston was concerned that she and a lot of other artists from her day wouldn't be able to afford to be buried and wouldn't be able to afford headstones. And so Zora Neale Hurston, conservative, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, accomplished writer, accomplished anthropologist, when she passed away, could not afford a headstone. So her grave was unmarked for quite some time until a philanthropist finally paid to give Zora Neale Hurston a gravestone. So, Love Light Ananda says, well, I'd agree with the conservatives in theory. Yeah, and I'm sure, and I agree with the conservatives in theory as well, but the reality is that Zora Neale Hurston then died and couldn't afford a gravestone. And I'm not going to say that Zora Neale Hurston was not a hardworking human being. So how do we resolve those things? And I'm discovering more and more that it has less to do with the way that people identify politically and what is the work that they are doing and how is that work affecting their own lives and the lives of people around them. Let's see, really, I didn't know that about, so Lovely Ananda says, I didn't know that about Zora. Yes, that is true. Hi, wear jacket. Claudia D, I'm not sure what you're asking. Hi, wear jacket, you black friend. Yo, call me Ananda. Okay, Ananda, I will call you. I will call you Ananda. Okay, I will do that. Although I love the love light in your name, but well, I'll call you Ananda moving forward. So yes, that's a little bit of what's on my mind. Not Drew says, I'm just saying, I'm listening to you in the background. I'm actually focusing on stuff. What are you focusing on? What are you working on? Not Drew. What's going on? What project are you working on right now that has your attention and has me playing in the background? Although I'm honored that I am what you've chose to have as your background noise this morning. So yeah. What else? So you guys know, you all also know that Black folks seem to work against our own best interest. It frustrates me to no end. It's very interesting. It's very interesting that and what I'm discovering as I'm doing this reading is that the same complaint has been made by people like W.E.B. Du Bois, people like A. Philip Randolph, in the reading that I'm doing of Collective Courage. You know that you all know that the piece that I'm working on, the Black Conference, is inspired by Collective Courage by Jessica Gordon Nemhard, which is available through University of Pennsylvania Press. Oh, I'm sorry, Penn State University Press. Yes, I believe Penn State University Press. I'm just looking for it and I can't see it. Uh, yes, yes, yes. Yes, the Pennsylvania State University Press. So yes, and a lot of people have been just talking about this idea that Black people have been so concerned with trying to fit into white society and internalize the values that existed in white society, which at the time were antithetical to the existence of Black life. Were antithetical to the existence of Black life. And so how are you going to, in trying to fit in, basically adopt a value that says that you are a second-class citizen, that you are less than a human being, that you deserve less than others. And so you have Black people who are not race traitors necessarily, but they feel as though this is something that was being done for the betterment of the race, the things that were being done as part of a collective strategy to uplift the race, to uplift the race. So Black people, try to make themselves more like their white counterparts in society. And you have to understand that we're talking about adopting cultural norms. We're not saying that they're acting white, they're adopting the cultural norms of the people in the society who happen to be white. And this is what a lot of people have done when they've come to the United States, right? And we see it happening now. People immigrate to the United States and they want to be American. And being American means, being a certain way. And doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the color of one's skin. It's just, hey, this is the culture that exists when I get here. So for Black people, the culture to emulate was that of the society, the dominant society, which was white Europeans. So to pick up the norms of dress, the norms of speech, the norms of decorum, all of those things were adopted, and along with that, norms of attitude towards other Black people, which said that they are less. So to be a good citizen, one had to also accept as a reality that the way Black people were was less than. Nanda says, adopting cultural norms, is that why Black men seem to go out of their way to partner up with non-Black women? That's interesting too, because George Schuyler talks about that as well. George Schuyler talks about that, and this book is really interesting. I got one of the few copies that was available through a seller, not through Amazon, but through a seller who was listed through Amazon. So it was sent to me through Thrift Books. So I don't know if there's a way to trying to show you all. I can't, it won't focus. But thrift books is where I got this. And it's obviously used. And it has that like old paper smell. It's kind of cool. But so George Schuyler talks about that, and he talks about it in the context of what was happening with Marcus Garvey and with people like A. Philip Randolph and the Messenger, who actually were actively um, opposed to what Marcus Garvey was trying to do. A. Philip Randolph was actively opposed to the Back to Africa movement. His feeling was that you can't just go, you can't take a bunch of people from one place who've been there for 300 years and then send them to another place where they intend to take over. You know what I mean? So the blacks going to Africa, Marcus Garvey appointed himself provisional uh, president of Africa. Provisional president of Africa, which is like no. So they were opposed to things like that. But there was also a color aspect, a colorism aspect, and he explains that there was a difference in terms of the way blacks in America view color. And although there have been preferences for people who were lighter skinned in the United States among blacks, that it's nowhere near what was present in the West Indies and places like Jamaica. And that's where Marcus Garvey was from. And so Marcus Garvey had really detested light-skinned black people. He detested them and spoke out against them. He called them, white people's niggas. Just, he really, really was, had, made hateful comments about people like W.E.B. Du Bois. And so, this idea the idea of, some people who are black, wanting to be married to, people who are white or who were lighter skinned. I definitely think that it ties to this respectability politics, right? And trying to pass. I think there are definitely connections to that. I don't think it's nearly as I don't think it's nearly as bad as it was. I don't think it's nearly as bad now as it was, Ananda. But yeah, I don't think it. Yeah, I don't think it, so. I don't think it's nearly as bad as it was. But I think there was a time when you thought you were doing. They actually called it. I think it might have actually been called like improving the race by mixing more white into your family line was improving the race. That was the way it was talked about. And I don't think people talk about it in the same way. I don't know that color is, I don't think it's, I mean, I think that we have so many uh, role models now who are dark-skinned African women, people from all over the world who are dark-skinned, who are being, put on the covers of magazines now, you know, and as the height of beauty. So I think that some of that is changing, but I definitely understand what you're talking about. So Theo S says Mississippi in Africa is a great book for first migration back to Gambia. I'm interested. And so, Theo S., are you talking that literally there was, this is a record of some folks who did go back to Africa and settled there and what the outcomes were? Um, I believe it's Cole Orton, or Coley Orton. Here from the UK, it looks like most African Americans keep holding a grudge while most whites nowadays don't really care. Well, isn't that convenient? Isn't that convenient? I don't know. I think about it all the time, and I'm like this. All right, if, for example, do you think that Jewish people will ever be able to let go of the history of what happened in the Holocaust? And I'm not saying we're comparing things, but when something is done to you or your family or the group that you belong to that is as horrific as what was done for 300 years against African Americans and then continued well into the mid to late 20th century. Is there an expiration date on when one should be wary? Is there an expiration date on it? So of course, if you're white and your experience is that the people that you belong to in the past did these horrific things, horrific things, that like dehumanizing to the white people. Like, I mean, if we saw a group of people doing that to another group of people, we would consider them barbaric, right? We wouldn't think of them as in any way. What's the word that I want to use? We wouldn't say that they were advanced. We would say that that was barbaric. And so, with that in mind, it makes sense that white people would want to suppress conversations about that. However, Black people and people of African descent from all over the world who were the target of that campaign of violence for so long, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't walk around consciously every day feeling like, ooh, white people are messed up. But I do walk around consciously every day aware of horrible things that are done around the planet for the sake of capital gain, for the sake of capital accumulation. And I think to myself, well, wow, if people could get away with it, they would do that today. They would do that, right? They would do that. And unfortunately, white people in the United States, that's the legacy that they have to deal with. And I think that for a long time, as long as it's in the cultural memory of Black people are going to probably have a little bit of wariness around how white people are thinking and behaving. Because all I have to do is go to my YouTube channel and read the comments to know that there are a large percentage of white people who believe or claim to believe that Black people are inferior. And anyone who thinks that I am inferior based on the color of my skin is something that I'm going to be wary about. And I'm going to see that person as dangerous. So, yeah, I don't think that Black people, not yet at least, I don't think Black people should drop their guard as far as what European, like people of European descent, are capable of, right? Are capable of. So again, it doesn't mean that I think that any particular white person is a bad person. I know all kinds of people from all kinds of background. I'm married to a man who is of European descent. Full on, he's as white as a sheet. And I sleep next to him every night, and I'm not afraid that I'm going to have my throat slit every night, and he's not afraid that he's going to have his throat slit. But I don't think that it seems reasonable to me that Black people would hold on to, and calling it a grudge is a little bit belittling, right? It's not a grudge. It's being aware of what is possible, thinking about like, is what I am seeing right now a sign that we are moving in a direction that might lead to my life being in danger. So, that's just what that is, right? That's just what that is. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Black folk who keep getting airtime to be racist apologist sickens me. Well, this is, yeah. So Cole Orton, thank you for the 50 likes. So let's see. Surely for us all to progress, we have to eventually let go of such things. I don't think it's about letting go. I think it's about demonstrating that we are different. Because letting go is just like saying, if you punch me in the face, right, I'm just going to let that go. If you punch me in the face one time, ever, I'm going to remember you as the person who punched me in the face. And I'm never going to let that go because when I see you, when your tone changes and when you start moving at me in a certain way, I'm going to take precautionary measures. So it's not about letting go. But if the person who punched me in the face makes a concerted effort to demonstrate that they have changed, it is important that I allow for that, give that person that space, right? Um, Rise above my own fear and try to see the best in humanity, right? Those are things, that's active. Letting go is passive, and that's just silly, right? It's like if you are the victim of a crime, if you're walking down the street and somebody mugs you, are you going back to that same street again? Are you going to go back there? Or the next time you go back there, are you going to go back there with protection? Or are you going to walk with a friend, right? Letting go would be just to go and walk back on that same street and do things the way you did them before. And that doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't make any sense. Um, uh, uh, Let me see. Hold on a second. Sorry, y'all. I had to take care of some business. I had to take care of some serious business, y'all. All right, so let's see. Big Boy Craig says, "Why you talking like white folk may?" Okay, let's see. Um, y'all, I'm taking care of a little bit. I'm taking care of a little bit of business today, just because I'm in a mood. Guest me, I have an opinion. So we have someone waiting in the queue who I don't know, but we'll find out who they are and what they have to say. Y'all, I guess it's Craig Bennett. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name's Craig Bennett from GayGang.xyz, and I'd like to say that your point's invalid and you're a stupid fucking nigger that doesn't deserve rights.
Oh,
Owned,
that's cool.
retard.
All right. So what leads you to have that opinion, that particular opinion?
Cause you're a dirty black and you don't work.
Okay. So is this an opinion that you've had about black people for a long time, or is this something newly developed? Where does this come from?
I just hate black people, man. I hate niggers.
Okay. So is this something did you have an experience in the past that led you to feel that way?
Oh yeah, I just hate niggers.
So this is something that's not motivated by anything. This is just like a completely without any type of analysis, just something that you decided that you
Yeah,
wanted
no,
to
it's
do.
motivated. No, it's
What's it?
motivated.
Can you talk about a little bit about your motivations?
It's motivated by me just hating black people, pretty much.
So you just is hate like a typical mode that you have? Do you walk
No, I
around
just hate
just
niggers.
and that's all you do with your life? Do you have any other things, any other background, any things that you
Why
know?
are you still talking?
Oh, because I'm very interested in your opinion.
Oh, no, just black people stole my shoes.
Some black people stole your shoes? What can you tell us a little bit about that story? I'm very interested.
So I was walking to the shops to get some eggs, right? And I was with my mate Jack Kelberg, and we went to the shops and went to the egg aisle and got a
Mm-hmm.
really yolky egg, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this guy called Adam from bhopping.com came up and he stole my shoes and he was just some dirty, filthy fucking sand nigger. And he
Okay.
just
And
ripped the shoes right off my feet.
right. That sounds like a really traumatic experience. So what happened? What was the follow-up?
I didn't get my eggs and I didn't get my shoes.
Okay. And so that one incident with that one particular individual, and you said sand nigger. Can you please be a little bit more explicit? Like, what does that mean?
No, he's just a dumb towelhead. He's like you, but a Muslim. He's like a
Oh, okay.
Malteser, pretty much.
Okay. So I want to just like throw this out there. So you've adopted this like sort of like, hate, dislike for black people. You see them as niggers, you
Over
see them
my
as sand
shoes,
niggers.
man. Over my
Right.
shoes, man. Oh my god. My
Right.
shoes, bro,
And so this is something that you just kind of like
and
walk
my
around with?
eggs.
Okay,
Yes, I walk around with my eggs, man, thinking that they're gonna get stolen. And
cool. Cool.
they stole my Reeboks, man. My Reebok shoes.
Right. Okay. So that's great. So I'm glad that you came on. I'm glad that you shared this opinion. I'm glad that you shared your story and basically a little bit about like how you came to that opinion. I think it's really important to know why people feel the way they do and why people think the way that they do. Is there anything else that you want to say before we cut
Um,
off?
Shout out GoGang.xyz, bhopping.com. You're still a nigger. You still have no rights. Owned
Oh,
retard.
all right. Well, thank you for joining us and thanks for sharing your opinion, man. Have a great one.
Um, yeah, have a bad life as well, man.
Okay, peace. Well, that was certainly interesting. That was certainly interesting. So, I mean, as we were saying, as we were talking about before, right? So there are just people who have certain opinions, and it completely demonstrates, as I was saying before, that there are people just based on the color of one's skin, based on someone's culture. I love that the person, brought up being Muslim, right? So these are things that people are perfectly happy to have these attitudes, walk around completely uninformed with very little analysis. And so we can't say that these things don't exist, right? So we can't simply pretend that everything is okay, right? And so I want to thank Craig Bennett for jumping on and offering us that opinion and did not upset Stefan. So, Espen Sean, I'm butchering your name. I'm so sorry. And hey to Trey Legal. Hello to Rusty Oxgo and anybody else who's joined us in the program. So today we've been talking mostly about Black conservatism and this idea that there are Black people who feel like there shouldn't be a push for civil rights, that Black people should simply wait for white people to change their minds. And there are other Black people on the other side, like folks like the NAACP, that have seen it as important to struggle for changes, shifts in policy, shifts in the law. So, love to hear what people think about our guest and how you think it maybe applies to or what does it demonstrate. Obviously, that's one person, right? So one person's not going to mean that we all have to shift gears, right, and start behaving in a different way. Trey Legal says, be comfortable with the bone they've thrown us. Very interesting. Very interesting. But if you go back and look at the what uh, W.E.B. Du Bois calls the Niagara Compromise. That's something to look up. It was a speech that was given by Booker T. Washington when there was a meeting of what's called, I believe it was the Niagara Movement. I'm not 100% sure, and I'm imagining that it was somewhere around the turn of the century from the 1800s to the 1900s. So, in a world where there are particular attitudes towards Black people that may or may not be leading to some kind of like imbalances, right? Social injustices, right? Is it important that we simply wait and show patience, be, um, or should we be working towards transformation? Let's see, Veganista. Just woke up. What did I miss? Well, we had some guests on today. We've been talking about Black conservatism. Going to the theater today. Talked a little bit about the fact that I'm going to the theater today. We talked a little bit, and I want to show you all this because I'm going to be talking about it more and more. Black Conference. This is Falconworks Theater Company's upcoming production. That's going to be our spring main stage and starting to do some work on that. Uh, Trey Legal is saying, I don't believe we can be totally liberated within this system. Ananda says, well, this Black Wynant will never bend to the will of racist lunatics. Will not. Will not. Um, so yeah, what else? What else is new? What else are you guys feeling? I don't really want to apologize, but oh, I was going to tell you all the story of what happened. So, I had fully intended to make some videos this week and get that going again, and it didn't happen. I got a phone call on Monday. So this week we did our Off the Hook program presentations, and Off the Hook is a program where young people are they go through a workshop and then they go away. We do a writing retreat with them. They write plays and then we come back and we produce their plays. And this was the week that we were producing the plays. And on Monday, which was the day that we were supposed to be loading in the set, we got a call from the venue telling us that they had double booked the venue and that we had to switch venues the day that we were expecting the set, the lights, the costumes to show up. All of those things were supposed to be happening on Monday. So we had to completely shift gears. And so I spent all of last week basically putting out brush fires to make sure that the show happened. The shows did happen. They went off without a hitch. They were amazing. They were well attended. We had small audiences, but they were well attended to the point where the kids really had to have, really got to have an experience of success. So that was really cool. But that was my week, and that's why I was not able to make videos. This week, I'm finally going to be traveling back. Next week, I should say. Well, yeah, this week. I'm going to be traveling back to Detroit. And the day that I had free to make a video, I actually have to go and do a dry run because I'm going to be taking a lot of artwork with me. And the artist wants to just make doubly sure that the artwork is going to fit in the car. So let me see. Cole Orton. Do you think that some African Americans are segregating themselves? Seems like in the U.S. there are black areas, white areas, Hispanic areas, etc. So Cole Orton, I would go, and if I were you, I would go and do some reading about just real estate and housing policy in the U.S. A lot of that stuff is available, and it will explain why the U.S. is so segregated as far as neighborhoods are concerned. It's tied to policies. It's tied to housing policies. And we've had something, there's also an article by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I'm going to try to spell this out. Please tell me if I'm getting this wrong. I believe that is Ta-Nehisi Coates. And it's an article that he wrote in Atlantic Magazine called The Case for Reparations. And it outlines really federal and other housing policies that have led to the types of segregated communities that exist, right? And so, also up until about 50 years ago, communities were very much segregated, schools were segregated. So you had an active aggressive campaign to maintain segregation in the United States. So, as far as black people segregating themselves, would one say that, Chinese people segregate themselves? If for thousands of years, certain people have lived in a certain area, chances are it's gonna take some time for that to shift, right? So just until the past 50 years, we had black communities segregated, right? You couldn't, and there are still practices that happen in real estate. In fact, you can, if you want to do an internet search for Donald Trump housing discrimination, you'll learn about some that the president of the United States was engaged in. So yes. Colton says, I'm British, so I know next to nothing about US socially except for what the media portrays. Isn't that wonderful? Or in a not way, Veganista says, I wouldn't pay no attention to mainstream media, what mainstream media says, right? So, all that being what it is, all that being what it is. So Theo S says, by the way, I'm making my first video and the topic is freeganism. So asking YouTubers whether they would eat waste animal products. Do they consider it moral? Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, like I feel like I want to as little, me personally, if you're asking because you want to know what I think, me personally, I feel like anytime I present flesh from an animal or a product that came from an animal as food, I'm buying into and promoting, maintaining an attitude that animals are objects, right? So, yeah, I don't want to, to me, I don't see that as, it's not a question of like whether it's moral to eat it or not moral to eat it. To me, it is not food. It is not food. So why would I eat? I wouldn't eat it any more than if, a person fell dead in front of me. I didn't kill them. It would be edible if I cooked it. Would I do it? You know what I mean? Would I do it? I wouldn't do it because I do not see a human being as food. So, however, if someone brought me a glass of breast milk, that I might consume that because at least that's food, right? That's food. It's a food stuff. It's intended to be consumed, right? So I don't know. I don't know about the whole freaking thing. Whether or not they'd eat animals themselves or like food, not bombs, tabling rescued food. Now, I'm a big fan of food, not bombs. And I don't know, Theo S., are you part of Food Not Bombs? Food Not Bombs, at least in Detroit and the group that I'm familiar with, I think because they want to provide food that most people that isn't alienating, they lean towards products that are vegan. And in my experience, at least the Food Not Bombs that I was working with, or that I have worked with, and the Food Not Bombs that provided food to last year's Pedagogy and Theater of the Oppressed conference, all of that food was vegan. But they will often include things like bread, even if that bread has like trace milk products in it. Um, so that's not, I've not known of a Food Not Bombs meal that contained animal flesh, however. And like I said, the experience I have with Food Not Bombs, the event that they were catering for us was vegan. So listen, y'all, I'm looking down at my phone and I'm seeing that it's ringing. And I think I want to grab this call. I'm not going to actually grab it, but I'm going to call this person right back. It's someone calling me from Detroit, probably looking for me to return. So all of that said, it's been great hanging out with all of you today. It's been an interesting live stream. I bet this is going to get I have a feeling this one's going to get a lot of views. Yes, vegan or vegetarian in the mandate website. The founder of it came up with the term freak. Yeah, freegan. Yeah, yeah. I think it's definitely worth having a conversation about. Yeah. Thanks, Ananda. All of you, it's been wonderful hanging out with you this morning, but it is time for me to start making some moves. So that said, that's it for this live stream. Those of you watching on YouTube, like this video if you like it. Share, comment, subscribe. This is Reg signing off. Love yourselves. Peace.